Introductory comments then. Let me start with the COO of Numolux Group, Mr. Arendse. Mr. Arendse, just tell us where you feature as Numolux Group in as far as the equation of bridging the gap between an unvaccinated population in South Africa or, a population vaccinated to a very small scale at the moment, and where you feature in the equation to try and get Sinovac into the equation.
Good afternoon to us, and thanks for having us. Look, the Numolux Group has been established and has its genesis within government, and so when we moved out, the business model was always to come alongside of the state and to assist where we can, and so its roots and genesis has been in health infrastructure. And when COVID struck globally in South Africa, we were approached by our partners in China to assist in bringing vaccines to the country. In short and in brief, your question around Numolux and COVID vaccines, we really do see that we're able to augment the vaccine rollout program that the state has initiated, and are looking to get approval from SAHPRA as soon as possible.
So speaking of that, the indication in March from SAHPRA was that they had received much of the documentation that they required from you. And in fact, last week they then told us that you had submitted the same dossier that you had submitted to the World Health Organization, which led to the WHO basically giving clearance for emergency use of the Sinovac vaccine. But in as far as SAHPRA itself is concerned, and any of you can tackle that particular point, how far are we in as far as the SAHPRA processes are concerned?
Good afternoon, Tula, and the listeners from eNCA, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you about our process with SAHPRA. So what has happened since March? We submitted the dossier from Sinovac on their CoronaVac product, which contains everything about the development of the vaccine, the manufacturing of the product, as well as all the clinical trials, the non-clinical part that has been done, and all the clinical trials that have been done, the quality and the safety information of all of the documents. We submitted that on the 10th of March. And roughly about 6 weeks later, we had a number of questions raised by the Biological Committee of SAHPRA that met on the 26th of April. And they had some questions that we had to answer. And this was then, a response was then given to SAHPRA on the 11th of May. And at that time, we also submitted the WHO dossier that Sinovac submitted to WHO. So that was concurrently submitted together with the responses. So we've received feedback from SAHPRA on the 15th of June, which was roughly about 5 weeks later, with another set of questions, and also from the Biological Committee, requesting then some more information, particularly modifications to the South African Risk Management Plan as well. So I must just say we've always had an open door policy, Numolux and Curanto Pharma, the applicant that I'm advising. We've always had a very open door policy. They're very supportive. Numolux and Curanto Pharma had several Zoom meetings with the regulator to clarify questions where both parties were not really confident about what the real questions meant. So Curanto Pharma has now submitted responses to all of these questions, and Numolux and Curanto expect now the regulator to provide a positive answer, hopefully very soon after we've submitted everything now in terms of the reliance review on WHO approval.
Mr. Arendse, I've got to ask you this question, and I know you're not a politician, but I'm sure you observe conversations that are happening around the Sinovac vaccine in the country, suggestions that it's being thwarted. It's basically not being fast-tracked and not being processed, despite the fact that it's being used in many other countries. South Africans watching this, what should they make of that kind of conversation? Do you have any concerns of that nature from where you sit?
Look, I think one needs to be objective about any assertions or aspersions that are being cast insofar as both the vaccines that are in the country as well as the regulator that oversees the work of bringing vaccines into the country. SAHPRA has a specific job to do, and we need to respect that. And so the work that they do needs to be thorough, because the last thing we want is for any medication, for that matter, not only vaccines, to be brought into the country only to find that the efficacy isn't as we expect it to be. And then yet another, point of finger will happen, or fingers will be pointed to SAHPRA because they're not doing their work correctly. So I think one needs to have a balanced view on this thing. I think the other aspect that needs to be talked about now, insofar as approval is concerned, is the fact, and you probably are aware, that on the 1st of June, the World Health Organization has now approved the use of Sinovac or CoronaVac, which is the trademark name for this vaccine. They've approved the use of this vaccine for emergency use. So I think we're also very fortunate in that we have quite a few eminent people in the field who have direct access to the work of the World Health Organization, including the chair of SAHPRA, Professor Helen Rees. And I believe all of these things should stand SAHPRA in very good stead to be able to make well-informed yet expedite decisions in respect of a vaccine approval in South Africa.
So you're urging caution and sensibility.
Overall, we believe that we're in a good space.
All right. Dr. Aspinal, let me ask you then the million-dollar question, I suppose. The effectiveness, efficacy of the vaccine. It's being used in over 20 countries around the world, and more than 800 million people having taken it in China, we are told. What is the picture that is emerging in as far as its efficacy and safety? And more importantly, if you throw in there as well the question of will it be effective against the beta variant, which is dominant in the South African context?
Yeah, thank you. I must just correct you. It's now been used in over 47 countries, so it's not just 20 anymore, so it's 47 countries. And the total number of fully vaccinated people who've received 2 doses to date is estimated to be 110 million, and the total number of people who've received 1 dose is over 300 million people that we have got our last figures on. So the normal process of any vaccine development has actually been followed with CoronaVac, and the preclinical testing phase have been very satisfactory. The phase 1, phase 2 studies, the first-in-man studies, as well as several large phase 3 studies that have been conducted in large cohorts have all been satisfactory. And the safety profile of CoronaVac is very similar to other commercially inactivated viral vaccines that are currently on the market. And there have been no serious adverse event issues that have been associated with these millions of doses that have been administered. Where there's been issues, it's been in extremely low levels, and it's not different from any of the other commercially available inactivated vaccines. And also, once vaccines are being approved, they are continuously monitored for any rare type of side effects. So in terms of the efficacy of CoronaVac, the phase 3 studies have been done in Brazil, have been done in Indonesia, and have been done in Turkey. And all of these studies have, in their clinical trials, have shown that the vaccine is 100% effective against hospitalizations and death. In terms of symptomatic infections, there has been a range of efficacy being reported, from 51% in Brazil up to 91% or 92% in Turkey. And this range of efficacy is perhaps confusing because it makes it difficult to compare certain studies against each other and also compare, like, for example, Sinovac coronavac vaccine to maybe Pfizer and to maybe the J&J vaccine, because the differences in efficacy results may be due to differences in the different populations that have been used. In other words, have they used high-risk healthcare workers as the population in which the trial has been done, or have they used low-risk populations? Also, what were the different variants circulating at that time in each of the country, and also the design of the trial. So I can just say, in terms of the efficacy that has now been reported in the media and worldwide, that trial has been done in high-risk population healthcare workers that have been consistently exposed to COVID infection.
I've got to press you, Doc, because I'm almost out of time. Could you just then speak to what we know about its efficacy against the Beta variant that is dominant in the South African context?
Okay, so in terms of the Beta variant, Sinovac has done 2 laboratory studies where they have shown effective neutralization of the Beta variant against immunized sera of people that have been immunized against with coronavac, as well as in convalescent serum. And both of these studies have been submitted to the regulator, and we expect the regulator now to look at these studies with the results that have been obtained on these studies when 2 doses have been given and it's been effectively neutralized. And we believe that we have submitted everything, the efficacy against the Beta variant is safe, it's effective in real-world situation, and that nothing is outstanding anymore in terms of the documentation that we submitted. And we expect the regulator to provide a positive answer, also based on the fact that WHO has really approved the quality of the manufacturing, the efficacy and the safety for.
So, Dr. Aspinal, I see that you're not able to, and perhaps you're being cautious, not wanting to attach a figure in terms of percentage of efficacy against the Beta variant, and I can understand and appreciate that. Lastly, Mr. Arendse, talk to me about what conversations are happening with the South African government in as far as procurement, possible procurement of this vaccine is concerned.
Yeah, tell us, before I do, I think it's important to really just look at the World Health Organization's position around mutations and variants. And their view is very clear, that vaccines are a critical tool, and that we should not put off getting people vaccinated because of the concerns about new variants. Because the more people that we get vaccinated, the lesser the chance of further mutation and further infection. So I think it's just an important point that needs to be made. Regarding the conversations with government and procurement of the vaccine, the conversations have been initiated with the department. Important to note here that at this stage, since our initial submission to SAHPRA and with the ministry, Sinovac has committed 5 million doses of the coronavac to South Africa, with the possibility of additional doses. We are confident in respect of our submission to SAHPRA, and we believe that approval is imminent. Latest word from our partners in China has indicated that we should be able to get 2.5 million doses by the end of July. That, of course, is on the presumption that we have SAHPRA approval and the necessary logistics is in place with the National Control Laboratory, etc., etc. So 2.5 million by the end of July, and the balance during the month of August. Of course, a lot of this would be contingent on finalizing negotiations on price, logistics, etc., etc.
All right. Thank you so much for your insights. I think I've learned a lot in the last while that we've been talking. Anton Arendse and Dr. Sanet Aspinal there from Numolux. That's the group that is basically spearheading the work to try and get the Sinovac vaccine approved in South Africa and for use. You heard it for yourself there from Mr. Arendse there that, the negotiations have been initiated with government, and they've committed, that is Numolux and their partners in China, 5 million doses committed to South Africa, with the possibility of an additional doses being made available, and 2.5 of these can be here by July. But we are told the decision, and they're thinking that they believe it will be an approval, the Numolux group saying that they believe that to be imminent from SAHPRA. So let's watch that space and see if this debate about whether or not Sinovac and Sputnik and the other vaccines are being blocked, if it will be settled one way or another in the coming days.